Okay.
The one about the house?
All right, guys. We have nobody online, but we've got 6, 7 of us here in Tequilas. This is the San Carlos Computer Club, and I did press the go live button, so we're streaming on YouTube right now. There you go. So hey, if there's anything to stop talking about it. Last week I was in Phoenix doing work, and the week before that I had gotten some kind of infirmity. So we did a virtual meeting. Oh, who do we have coming in? Irving's coming in. Irving, you're sitting over there in the corner. The only people online right now are actually in this room.
Well, now where's Chester? Because this is week 2.
Right?
Should we be concerned?
Did he not make it at all last week?
We didn't see Chester at all last week.
That is an interesting, yeah.
No.
And maybe people are still, I don't know, daylight savings afflicted.
Oh yeah, because James came in last week from Vancouver Island.
Is that where he was?
An hour late.
That was
Yeah.
2 weeks ago.
Well, we are getting started. We've got a nice group here. Have we brought any topics to the conversation? Right off the top of the hour, Judy has her hand up.
This was a scary thing this morning. So, I was looking on Chrome at Opiniones Sonora.
Okay.
John?
All of a sudden flashed up your iPad, because I saw my your iPad has been infected with malware. Click, looks like it's coming from Apple. Click here and blah, 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 blah. So I go out of Chrome, I log back onto Chrome, I log back into Opiniones Sonora, same thing.
No other websites, just that website.
So I go in, I cleared my cache, kind of a deal. So I don't know if it's Opiniones Sonora.
Well, I would imagine you were very appropriate in your behavior, because it would only be following through on that would have compromised something. What is happening is websites are being compromised, and this is the most they can do, is they can throw up a message that looks very legitimate.
And it did look, I mean, it said it could have a little box, and it said Apple has detected blah, 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 and all this stuff.
John?
Yeah,
It
and
was very
what
interesting.
what's also what would be interesting is to go to Opiniones Sonora from a different
I
platform.
thought about it, and then I thought, I don't really care that much about Opiniones Sonora.
Well, what I would suspect the behavior you would see is, say you go to it on a Windows Chrome, it would modify the message to look very much like a Windows legitimate message saying that you have been compromised, because it's not very hard for malware to tailor itself to whatever platform you're on.
But when you look on help me, why is my iPad compromised? They say no, your iPad is not compromised. And if you think you might have malware on your iPad, you can clear the cache of the browser, and that will do it. This is on the Apple support. So anyway, that was an interesting experience this morning.
Yeah,
I
and
use Chrome because it translates so much easier than any of the other browsers. When I look at Radar Sonora,
you're talking about the automatic translation feature built into the browser.
and it's easier to use on Chrome.
It's Chester.
Yeah, Chester.
Chester is with us.
And so Jimmy.
And Jim's here too. Good morning. Welcome. We've already gotten started. There's 7 of us in Tequilas, and we're missing you guys.
How come we can't hear them? Or is nobody speaking?
Nobody's speaking. Everybody's muted.
Oh.
Everybody is muted. Nobody's showing us a video. They're all doing unscrupulous acts behind their screensavers.
Maybe.
They're just sitting in their underwear.
Hopefully, at least that.
Well, yes. So your experience, I wouldn't be surprised if you went to it on a phone. It would identify your phone. If you went to it on a laptop, a Macintosh machine, I would expect it to recognize Safari. Because what they are to the server, because you're hoping to get a tailored experience for that device. The consequence of that is you're getting a tailored malware message, yeah, to your device. So any one of these devices could look very legitimate. And yeah, and it would be interesting to see what it would look like on another platform. But who's to say that on another platform you might be more compromised? Maybe you're more susceptible just going over and all of a sudden you've gotten yourself infected. I don't believe that's the case with iOS. In most of these, I believe that you would have to follow through before anything's happening. It's just one of those jump scares that they're doing at you. Hey Jim, if you don't have anything to add, I'm gonna mute you because your ambient noise is coming through. Oh, you didn't hear the bustling?
No, but I'm over here.
Yeah.
Not only that, he's invisible.
Yeah, he's not even there. I'm talking to his bed.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there he is.
There he is. Well, I have brought a couple of topics like I typically do, but as far as news goes, I've also got an experience I'd love to share with you guys. But I'm still interested in hearing what you guys are doing, or any questions, comments, things you want to bring up to the group. Anyone out there on the internet? Jim, you got anything you want to bring up? I see your finger. Yeah. Go right ahead.
Just what our group thinks about the Sam Altman escapades over the weekend, and whether or not he's going to wind up at Microsoft or go back to OpenAI.
So this is very interesting. I have not read anything on this, but I've been listening to opinions on it all weekend. And if you guys don't know, the big thing in the last 12 months has been Chat GPT. Everybody knows what that is when I say it now. And consequently, most people know what OpenAI is, the company that created Chat GPT. And we know about this because it has just created this drive for artificial intelligence. Every platform aspect and every tool they use that's digitally, they're going to put AI. So Sam Altman is the CEO. What he is exactly, what his role is?
His former role was CEO of OpenAI, chairman of the board, I guess it was, of OpenAI, the nonprofit, and chairman and CEO of the for-profit subsidiary.
Yeah, and it's good that you bring it up like that, because it's an unusual organization, isn't it? That's what I've been hearing, is that you normally don't form an organization like this. This was an organization put together by industrial leaders that wanted to explore artificial intelligence under constraints. They wanted to have enough resources that profit motivation would not enter into the development of this technology, because they were concerned about how it might develop. They really wanted to develop AI on rails with you know, like metaphoric guardrails around it so it wouldn't get out of control. And so that was this nonprofit, and they spun out this this arm for profit to bring revenue into the organization. And that's where it gets really weird. Apparently, Sam Altman was very successful as a leader driving this organization. and the board was not appreciating that. And they decided to oust him, a surprise, because he'd just been like that week, he'd been on stage with Microsoft talking about his company and the contributions that they were going to be making to Microsoft. And then less than a week later, over the weekend in secrecy, the board that runs OpenAI votes him off the island.
But I thought he.
I can tell you what the Wall Street Journal has said about it.
He's neither left or
No,
chosen
he's
to
left.
leave.
He has
What's
left
happened
as
is
well.
Chester's.
Chester, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah, he has left as well as the guy that was to replace him. And yesterday they sent a letter out signed by 500 employees, 500 of the 700, that they wanted to go with him to Microsoft. Their only
But he didn't-
reluctance. Their only
When-
reluctance was
Sorry, Chester, go ahead.
the only reluctance for going with Microsoft is they wouldn't make as much money because they expected a substantial stock increase over time that with the current employer. Now, my understanding is there were only 4 directors. And so the employees and the whole
Actually,
company
Chester,
the whole company has a
Chester-
very serious problem because they've not only lost management, but they've lost them. They're about to lose all their employees.
And Jim, you were going to comment? Did we lose Jim? It looks like he froze up.
Yeah, it's interesting. The board had 6 members, not 4, but the other 2 were Altman and his co-founder Bachman, both of whom left. Altman kicked out, Bachman immediately resigned and joined him. So now there are only 4 remaining.
When we say left, what you mean is he was voted out and he left without a fight.
One did. That would be Altman. The other one resigned.
And then the other resigned because of it. And then they were
Correct.
scrambling because the rest of the organization was putting in their resignations.
Yeah, basically wrote an open letter. And I think the last number I heard was over 700 had signed that letter out of 770
Yeah, that's what I had heard
total
too.
employees.
So I find this fascinating because I like the altruistic intrigue behind setting up a nonprofit to develop AI. And the reason he has gotten voted out is because his movements being so successful commercially doesn't jive with the board, who feels that it's a nonprofit endeavor.
I don't think that's correct.
No, you don't, Chester? How
No,
do you see
He was
it?
forming 2 additional corporations and was devoting all his time to his new ventures and was not devoting his time to the company. And my understanding is that's why they fired him.
I thought those were spin-offs of OpenAI. They were still under.
Something he was forming outside of the company.
Oh, that's not the way I understood it. I also
just
thought
quoting the
that
Wall
their
Street
official
Journal.
line was that he didn't have a media presence and kept misrepresenting the organization.
I think he was misrepresenting what he was doing outside of the organization.
That would make sense to me.
Which part, Jim?
That he was working on 2 other activities outside of the scope of OpenAI, because they kept talking about the fact that he was not forthcoming in his communications with the board, and the board lost confidence in his ability to communicate with them and to work with them.
That's what I also read.
That would make sense.
Yeah, it's what's interesting though is that it looks like the board is going to end up losing their seats. It looks like this isn't going to happen. It looks like he's coming back, Looks like he's bringing his crony with him. It looks like he's got the support of most of the organization, at least the people that actually do things.
The
And
investors.
so- what's that?
He has the support of the investors.
The
As well
investors.
as
And the
employees.
investors, yes.
Yeah, I would,
Yes.
Chester, I would think, yeah, if the employees weren't supporting him, he wouldn't have the support of the investors.
That's probably true.
So a lot of drama over the weekend over artificial intelligence.
Lot of drama.
It upset the market also.
Yeah,
Yes,
so what
it did.
happened there? If you were invested in any of this, would you have made money, lost money? Is it now time to get in? Is it time to get out? What does this mean to us?
I can't answer that. Sorry.
Do you refuse to answer or you?
I wouldn't get in any event.
I wouldn't get into any of it.
It's right up there with cryptocurrency.
It's all Bitcoin now,
It's
baby.
all Bitcoin.
It's all Bitcoin. Yeah, Irving, you wanted to add something? Oh, please, sure. But speak up.
They had an election, and an extreme right winger got elected, to the shock of everybody. And he's promising to switch the economy completely. He's a very,
It's socially.
they're calling him the Trump of.
Yes. Of Argentina.
And
Trump
Trump
says
says,
to go for it. He was all for it.
1938 Germany is what they're equating it with.
Okay.
Jesus.
A little
Oh, my
more
goodness.
deeper than I thought. And so the markets, now you're bringing the markets, it seems that the cryptocurrency market is having a lot of volatile investment going up again. In my opinion, it's all worthless.
Right.
But the world seems to be jumping on. Now you've got a whole country that takes switch to it. So that's that.
Well, I think in most of these financial realms, they benefit from people not being very bright. We're fortunate people aren't really paying attention to the way things do work because they can speculate on these things that don't work. I guess the question, you got to get out in time. Like I didn't get a chance to really talk much last week about Dumb Money, but I highly recommend that movie, and it's just so much fun to watch as they drive up this GameStop stock, and it's obvious they know how things work. I mean, if you pull the right levers, this is the way it works. It's just people just typically don't get organized to do, but the fact that it would be at such an extreme value at some point, and there are people that lost their shirts because they just kept hanging on to it because they were part of a movement and they lost everything. All the value that was put into it was lost. You guys know what I'm talking about? We talked about the movie a little bit last week.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, there's got to be a tipping point where we all realize it's just all nonsense.
That's the people who bought tulips in Holland.
Yeah.
Or the ones that buy the virtual artwork.
Right? Oh, they.
That's kind of like, huh.
Scott,
I think that's done. I think that had its day and it's
the
done.
NFTs.
NFTs, yeah.
At home, Canada, we have the opposition leader at the moment who is on record as saying he thinks the Canadian pension fund should be invested in Bitcoin. He says that's the way to go.
Mm.
It's not just us. Never mind.
He's serious. He's right up there with Venezuela, by the way.
Argentina.
Argentina.
Trump.
Remember, they took our social security.
1938. All right, is this an association game? Nazis.
Say it.
There.
Now you said it on air.
Oh my God, no! That's what's the algorithm going to do to me now?
When did that happen?
I don't know. Irving,
Oh, I
when did
watched
that
a silly movie, and one of the subplots was the guy, the loner that can't get a girlfriend. His buddies are dating people,
I don't know when that happened.
and he's left all by himself, so he's going back to his phone for entertainment. And he's watching Instagram, and all that keeps coming up on his feed are animals having sex with each other. And he's like, "What is wrong with my algorithm? Do I have to like just uninstall and reinstall?"
All this time I've been
That's a subplot. Every time he goes to his phone, it's like, "This is not what I want to see. Where's the bikini?"
These are bonos.
Part of this, touch on is that it's being ruled by certain heavyweights predicting the probable fall of the American dollar.
Say that again, Irving. It sounded very profound.
Yeah. The probable or possible fall of the American dollar. And behind it is a mathematical truth. We're borrowing more, I think now 33 point something trillion, which of course increases our debt, which is now, I don't know, 600 something billion a year just to service the debt. So in order to pay this debt, we've got to borrow more. And so it's been supposedly was fueled by the pandemic and these couple of wars that we're supporting, and the wars we don't know about. And so, but money is what, and we've got to keep on borrowing more,
Sure.
and it costs more. And it's a cycle now. It grew. I remember when it reached 7 billion, there was an outcry that we couldn't survive. 7 billion. We're probably spending that every minute right now.
Sure.
And still it just keeps going. And so heavyweights, this guy just retired from one of the best funds. I forget his name, one of the most successful funds in America. And he's discussing this fact that it's maybe unsustainable.
So the Argentina going.
Nice of him to entertain what's obvious. Put it out there.
I always go back to Russia. Russia can go pro. I mean, they beat us to the moon.
Right.
They were no lightweight. They can go pro. Why can't we?
Sure.
Not we, but them over there in America.
Those Northerners.
Yeah.
Cheryl, you were found
No,
something there?
No,
What?
I was just thinking about Bitcoin in Argentina being the demise of the American dollar. That's quite
Well,
that's quite
if that happens, what it means is that the American dollar was awful weak. If something like that could trip it, it's on the bubble already.
You know what it really means is there's a bunch of Americans that figured out they can make more money with Bitcoin in Argentina than they can dollars in the U.S.
Well, they're moving to alternatives. Gold is always the main alternative about, my experience. And Bitcoin is supplanting it as a means of placing money just in case. Listen, how many yen can we buy for 10 cents right now? We might be able to fill up the room. So there's an example of what can happen when the dollar collapses. It'll be worthless.
Well, and Bitcoin does give the advantage of having a decentralized currency exchange. So you're not dependent on one government's currency staying stable, which is where we've been for 100 years, is reliant on the United States' economy stabilizing the rest of the world.
But who really is behind it?
Nobody.
No one.
No one. That's
I don't know that that's true.
well.
Speaking as a conspiracy theorist.
Well, okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, there are definitely factions that have vested interest in the way that Bitcoin grows and it's interpreted, but the fundamental underpinnings are not controlled by any particular person
That you know of.
or government
or government or
corporations.
It's
Well, you-
being exploited.
Who is behind the curtain?
But
That's-
basically,
Oh, yeah.
it's free market.
There-
Ignore the guy behind the
And,
curtain.
it's basically, I think, it's money. It's like saying to every crook in the world, okay, now you can wash away money without risk. And of course, they make more money than the government.
It's like in Colorado when I think this has now changed in the last year, but they didn't allow pot shops to have bank accounts. It was a total cash base.
Sure, yeah.
Now, really?
Hot shots?
And we trust
Pot
Yeah, the marijuana
shops.
shops in
Marijuana?
Arizona, in Alaska, in Colorado, it's all the same thing in Oregon, and it's because it's federal
federally
trade.
Illegal.
You
So it's
the only kind of
illegal.
bank you could use would have to be a mom and pop's bank right there in your city. It couldn't go across the state lines.
There's no
Oh,
risk in
cannabis.
using Bitcoin.
What's that?
A lot of big companies like Tesla was taking Bitcoin, I don't know if they still are. There's no risk in using Bitcoin as long as you get an instant transfer. You sell it and you get paid.
Right,
You
use it as a medium. You don't use it as a
yeah.
storage mechanism. Use it as an infrastructure.
Where the real risk lies is in the value. And the
Yeah.
super risk lies in the fact
Drive to the.
that you don't own it. It's a number. That number could either be stolen and will be stolen, of course, not could be, has been proven already. And plus, the worst part of it is you can lose it.
In my mind, I guess it's like a blank check. The check itself isn't the value. It's what you put on it. So Bitcoin is kind of like something that you can transfer, but you get it off of that check. You don't keep it as a piece of paper.
You don't hang on to that check
You
thinking
don't
you
hang
can
on.
hand it to somebody later and use it as money. You get the money out of the check.
Yeah.
You lose the code, you're done.
Yes.
The code is gone.
Right. So you better
And nobody
transfer
else
it
can
into
have it.
to real or to currency or
Well,
something.
Nobody else can have it is absolutely true because of that immutable ledger. I was listening to a podcast that I enjoy called The Darknet Diaries, and they had an interview with a hacker that got busted. He had done a number of things, like anonymous type things. And when he was getting raided, he was crying because his external hard drive was sitting there on the shelf and they took it. And what they didn't know when they took it was it had 10,000 Bitcoin on it. And it just sat in an evidence lockup. The government can't take advantage of it, even if he told them about it. He can't get it back because it was all, so that 10,000 Bitcoin is now out of circulation, unrecoverable, and ends up raising the price of Bitcoin everywhere. They didn't say this in the interview, but this is where my mind goes with it. Because of the laws of scarcity and supply and demand, all Bitcoin gets worth more because those 10,000 are now out of circulation.
They're permanently out of circulation?
They are if they destroy his equipment.
Yeah, but he has to get that
Yeah.
hard drive back before anybody.
They'll never put it in his hands, and he'll never give them the password
Yep.
for it. So it's for all practical purposes locked up and unusable. What's that?
Irving was just telling me how much
10,000 Bitcoin is?
Bitcoin
Yeah.
is
10
now.
times
And then the
33,000.
big picture
Yeah.
of currency change in legislation.
Well, and that's after Bitcoin has lost half its value through, I mean, what happened at the beginning of the year? It's
We need a change in the law.
What's bad is if your computer gets kidnapped electronically and you have to pay Bitcoin to get it.
Only Bitcoin's on the computer.
Problems that I foresee, we don't understand it. We're all dinosaurs here, right? Not Scott. But
Oh,
we're
I'm-
basically dinosaurs. We don't understand the language, the music, the
Exactly.
politics, and basically it's like a foreign language. So it's not the system that's fault, it's basically we're out of the loop.
I think that we might be, and if you're a dinosaur, I'm a Neanderthal. It doesn't matter if we're in the loop. What it does matter is that we support regulation that can be in the loop, and I think our tax authority has done that. They've put together a department that is specifically checking the blockchain, and the thing that people always get. They always make the mistake of thinking that this is good for anonymous payments, and it's not. It's complicated, it's difficult, but it's very well documented, and that's what the blockchain is all about, is documentation. And so they've put together a tax service department They spend all their time analyzing that blockchain. You want to bet they haven't been throwing the blockchain at these AIs, asking them to sort out where this money's going, because it's easier than them going number by number, wallet by wallet. The real advantage that Bitcoin has over cash is you pay somebody in cash, that money has just disappeared from the economy. You pay somebody in Bitcoin, eventually they're going to track down that transaction. They're going to see what wallet it came from and what wallet it went into. Our government regulated departments that are trying to get paid taxes on this stuff.
But it all goes back to standing.
That's right.
It's like the pot shops.
Mhm.
You can only use a local bank.
No, I don't.
Yeah, they
think
can-
do that.
I think that because of our federal laws, they can't do any banking with the exception of some, loan shark on the corner, some check cashing place.
They pay their employees in cash.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was, by this point in time, it was all federally.
No, because it's
They're
still
working on it.
anything that's interstate is federally related.
Yeah.
And the feds haven't let up on any of their regulation on marijuana. It's all state. It's
all poison.
It's absurd.
well, and at the same time, the federal government continues to keep this. I mean, not to get on a soapbox about marijuana laws, but the federal government could be collecting so much money in taxes,
Treat it like alcohol.
right?
Well, that's exactly what they do in Canada.
Yeah.
It's a federal, the federal government legalized it.
You want to know how to pay for single payer health care?
Yeah.
Start charging marijuana taxes for it.
Another example is gambling. Gambling's been outlawed by the states on occasions throughout its
Yeah, but that's
history.
a statewide decision. I don't think it's federal.
Oh, yeah, we don't have federal well, you're probably right because Nevada's open.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It always has been.
Yeah, and Nevada's passed
And-
the laws that legalize it
Yes.
One time you couldn't have a card game about 70 years ago.
with money.
And that was federal.
They can raid your house if you have a friendly card game.
And that was a
I
federal.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know.
Well,
of any
prohibition
federal-
was federal, wasn't it?
Yes, but
Yeah,
that was.
that was
alcohol.
federal.
Yeah, but
It's
Well,
still,
what's-
it's funny.
And that
when we
didn't work
lived in
either.
But
Atlanta,
Scott, even if we
There
get
are-
all that money,
I think
They're still
11
gonna
counties
overspend it.
around,
it's not gonna solve anything.
and it
We've had
depended on
windfalls
where
of
you went
every
to
kind.
dinner.
I-
Dinner with which
maybe I'm due for them to just like completely spend too much money in healthcare and get exploited and have to. I mean, it would be nice to have those problems for a little while instead of inadequate and unavailable. You just have ballooned and
Actually, we probably, healthcare is probably one of the biggest expenditures there are.
yeah.
Anybody can get it.
Say again.
Anybody can get it, which
How?
a VA or go into any hospital and have to refuse service.
Yes, you can.
Well,
you have to
it's
refuse service.
yeah, but it's inappropriate to say anybody can get it when it's going to screw up your credit rating. You're probably not paying for it in the first place because you're in an economically challenged environment to begin with. So you get sick and you are destined to be destitute for the rest of your life.
Well, no, not necessarily. Basically, welfare and social services and all these other services. Because if, let's say a person is flat broke, and let's say they get some terrible disease, let's say they have a heart attack. Well, they're gonna rush them to a city or a public hospital, and they're gonna treat them. They may not get the top doctor, but they're gonna treat them like any other paying hospital. That's the law.
That's in theory.
Well, and you're disassociating it with the aftermath. The aftermath in our country, we have to talk about.
None of this applies. They do
Right.
have free care.
Yeah, if you're bound to be destitute, if that's your destiny,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. If your destiny is to be destitute, then yeah. Yes, Judy.
While gambling is legal under U.S. federal law, while gambling is legal under U.S. federal law, There are significant restrictions pertaining to interstate and online gambling, and each state is free to regulate or prohibit the practice within its borders.
Oh.
So it's legal or not.
Yeah, well, in places like Arizona, they get around it because it's all on
Reserve.
reservation
Colorado
land.
is mining towns.
Yeah. Oh, like incorporated towns,
Mining towns.
mining specifically.
Like Cripple Creek and Black Hawk.
I just assumed that would be what that meant, is it was an incorporated town. It was a corporate town. Different than, yeah. Maybe. Like in those incorporated, they have bylaws that determine how the town is run,
The
and
state has allowed gambling towns.
that's really
Like
interesting.
Cripple Creek, up on Cripple Creek, and all that, Black Hawk. And on the reservation, of course, too.
Back to healthcare. I have two major complaints about the US. The price of post-high school schooling and their healthcare. Every other country I've been to in the world, including poor ones, Guatemala, that type of thing. You can see a doctor within an hour. You need help, you can get it. In the United States, it's, well, we have an opening in February, maybe.
Or I'm sorry, we're not taking new patients
Yes.
because of the lack of.
You're on Medicare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always heard Canadian was terrible. Is Canada terrible for appointments?
Well, about the same,
Yeah.
about the same.
It's getting worse.
You know,
So it's not everywhere.
But at
no,
least
the
Canadian
US and Canada are
healthcare
very
system
similar in that regard.
gives you a 6-month leeway, you're taken care of for that. We don't even have that. It's a few months ago in Tucson.
Mhm.
Nobody would see me before November, and this was, I think, August.
You have the same complaint in Canada. Yeah. You're seeing later and
Yeah,
later
well,
and later. And
$600.
not taking any new
and a
patients.
walk-in emergency clinic later, I got some pills.
Well, emergency clinics, even like our doctor's office clinic has become a walk-in.
Yeah.
You can't get an appointment, but you can come and walk in. If I need an x-ray, I can walk in. I get the x-ray right away.
Mhm.
When I walk in for an appointment at the doctor's office, 3 hours, 2.5 hours, an hour. And you're sitting there with sick people who
Yeah,
are trying, you know.
That's-
It's just the stupidest system.
That is definitely the way it works here in Mexico. But I gotta say, I can go to a doctor, I can get health care. It doesn't break me. It doesn't. Yes, I may have to wait for it, but I'd have to wait for it in the States,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't be able to afford the bill.
I can get a
Come
doctor's
see
appointment
Lottery.
faster in San Carlos
See
than I
Dr.
can in
Seeley.
Canada.
Oh, yes.
Of course.
Well, and then what you say about the X-ray, about labs, all of that is so readily available to me in this country,
Yeah.
and in the United States, it's a joke. It's. I tried to get labs one time on my own. It cost me hundreds of dollars. They didn't know where to send them. They couldn't give them directly to
You
me.
don't have a primary physician?
No, nobody in my network is taking new,
Exactly.
right? Because that's it's right now.
Just
But if you've got enough money, you can always find healthcare in the United States.
And if you're in Canada and you have enough money, you just go to the States.
And buy-
And buy it.
If you want an appointment this year,
yeah,
go to the States.
but you
If
gotta
you
have.
have enough money.
All right. We're ranting about stuff that's not computer related.
Well, wait,
Boxes
Scott.
here.
I sent you a link. This very thing.
What did you send me a link of? Is it in the
Well,
chat
no,
here?
it's in the.
Oh, it's in the.
I think the last one on the line there.
What do we got? Forward Health launches care pods.
Yeah,
Health
care pods.
contained AI powered doctor's office.
Wow.
Oh wow! I want to read about this. It's in TechCrunch. Keep in mind that's an investor magazine publication, so they are writing about themselves most of the time.
I don't know.
Anyway,
But that's a cool. I mean, I can only
it looks
imagine
like
it's.
there's a picture of it. It looks like a photo
What was
booth
the
in the middle of a
other
mall,
That's right.
and you
Care
bas-
pods.
you basically walk in and the AI interface asks you questions and diagnose and refers you somewhere.
I'm all for it. I'm all for wearing the Apple Watch and having them collect all my health
Yeah,
data,
absolutely.
throwing it at an AI, having an AI regularly telling me what kind of care I should be doing to my body. I think
At this precise moment, my clinic knows.
I think that's the only way to deal with the disparage, the yeah, how different things are when you're a normal person versus somebody that's able to pay for all this stuff. I think AI and things like
So, doesn't
wearables
it look like
are
a
going to.
photo booth?
There we go.
Or a public restroom.
What was it they had
Well,
in
you-
Futurama? They had
They'll take
suicide booths.
Your samples are too far off. They'll do a blood test there. I don't know how they collect it.
Scary.
Punch in the nose.
Is
Standalone medical stations
slash your
called
writ
care
here,
pods.
drain it in you.
Well, you know what this is reminding me of is that we went to get glasses for my daughter when we were in Alaska, and we didn't do Costco because it was going to take a few weeks, like 2 weeks to get set glasses in Alaska from Costco.
So what did you mortgage?
So we went over to this optical care place that
Yeah.
was new in town, 2 for 1, and we're like, great. And my daughter had already picked them out before we realized, no, that's not like 2 for a Costco price. It's like if you were going for 2 pairs of glasses, it was a pretty good deal if you started at Costco for 2 pairs and you ended up at this place. But I would have much rather had 1 pair for a Costco price than 2 pairs for this price. That being said, they had to do a eye examination on her because we had not done one here in Mexico beforehand, and it was the cheapest place in town to get an eye examination. No, cheaper than Costco. Yeah, Costco is twice the price of this place. But again, this place is selling glasses, and so they're bringing you in, and this is the hack. You go there for the eye appointment, and then you don't buy anything from them.
Yeah, well, we do
Right.
that all the time.
That's what you do.
And you go to
But
Costco.
the eye appointment was done by a virtual doctor. And so my daughter sat in this care pod kind of hall, like all by herself. I was in there with her. And there was a screen in front of her of a real doctor in real time, somewhere out there in the world doing her exam. A mirror on the wall in front of her so that she could look at a screen behind her that was being virtually manipulated by the doctor remotely away. And what was really interesting is that she was wearing a device that was calibrated for that mirror presentation. And the device was presenting to her something based on whatever that was. And I was watching that, and it was nonsense. It was lines. She's looking through this digital device that's interpreting those squiggles and lines through the mirror, and she's answering the doctor's questions of what she's seeing.
And how are her glasses?
Oh, she's happy with them. Yeah, they're awesome. And she got 2 days. She got a backup pair, and
Got a good prescription, how much?
the prescription.
Just the eye exam.
Yeah, just the eye exam. It was like under $75. It was something like that. It was some really reasonable price.
Here in Guaymas, I don't know if you guys.
Oh, we would have done it in Wymus if we had remembered to do it in
Okay,
Wymus.
but they don't charge anything.
No, it's really
They
cheap.
have a machine that does it. Dr. Pedro can play on
Mm.
economical history. But his daughter's now running. And I've had trouble with prescriptions in the United States, but their machine gives you a perfect prescription. And this is since I'm here 20 years.
Yeah.
You look in there and the thing goes back and forth, spits out the prescription, and it's free. Now, the glasses are very, very cheap, but their frames are very, very poor.
Yeah, we've always gotten the kids' glasses at Costco. This is the first time we didn't get them from Costco. And one of the things that really, I mean, like I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're going to pay this much for 2 pairs of glasses. And then they told us they'd be ready. And well,
Might be worth it.
yeah, I'm like, geez, well, I mean, when you figure it out, it's about $100 more than I'd pay for 2 pairs of glasses at Costco. but my daughter was going to wait 2 weeks for glasses at Costco, and
Yeah.
I would easily pay $100 for her not to wait 2 weeks to be able to see. I like that. To me, that would be just like that's yeah, that's costed now.
So getting back to the virtual doctor.
Yeah.
Is it a remote doctor or is this all AI?
No, this was totally a remote doctor. This is a doctor in a different location. Could have been in India.
Doctors are doing that.
Yeah,
That's the fact
probably
that
was.
they're
Yeah.
all doing that. Every doctor is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And really, as long as they get the blood test and the test they order, it's really not necessary.
So I went over the summer to a doctor and they wheeled this little thing in that looked like it was gonna hold a drip or something, and it was actually a screen. And this person on the screen was in India, but she was taking all the notes of what was transpiring in the room with the doctor.
Hey, for you folks that are still with us in the virtual meeting, I'm going to switch over to the other meet code because we've only got a few minutes left. And so,
Nice when you're having fun.
yeah, I'm setting that up right now.
But when I asked the person on the screen, well, I can't remember her name, but where are you? And she told me someplace in back and forth to her, but she was doing all the doctor notes. I thought that was interesting. It's cheaper for them to have somebody writing and transcribing the notes in India than it is having somebody right there in the office sitting there doing it.
Yep.
Pretty bad.
All
I went to Kaiser to have a photograph taken of my retina, right eye. And before they took the photograph, the same thing happened. They brought in this little screen,
Yeah.
and I talked to a doctor. It was a Kaiser doctor, so I assume it wasn't in India. And she asked the basic questions, did the screening and stuff like that. And I had my picture taken, I was done.
So what happens to these notes? I assume it's a permanent record somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have backup.
Well, Kaiser,
I
everything
don't
is,
understand what the problem is.
everything
The
is
problem is,
computerized.
yeah,
Hmm.
that and
I don't see any problem with it at all. Actually, I think what it does is it creates healthcare that's more accessible to people, and that's the goal.
it didn't make it any cheaper.
Oh, you paid the same price for all that, huh?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't pay anything,
Yeah.
but, well, I did. I mean, ultimately, yes, I do pay, but as far as money out of my hand right then, no.
Mm.
But all of this is adding to healthcare costs. Has to be.
Well, it's got to be reducing them, right?
Mm.
Like when you don't have to have somebody in a physical location to do appointments, and I mean, it seems like all that ends up being less expensive.
It saves money for the provider,
Yeah.
not necessarily the patient.
Well, that's our messed up system, not. I mean, you can't call these bad ideas. They're managed poorly, but they're not bad ideas. I mean, our over-encompassing system needs to be rethought out. Irving, you've had your hand up. What do you want to add? Oh, yeah, let's get back to some computer topics.
What? That's unheard of.
Sorry to break in.
Yeah,
All right.
it's all right. The rest of our group doesn't seem to be here with us anymore.
On my
Where are
computer,
you at?
my hard
Which-
drive, I have a large hard drive. Want to know, you're going to check their health because I used to back up my entire drive on this thing. It's a large external
Oh, I'm in the
drive.
wrong one, aren't I?
But I think
a text.
Here we go.
I'm just, where am I? You don't make it when you daddy wash. No more.
There we are.
There we are. Everybody's here. Welcome back, everybody.
Jim and me? What are you talking?
Are hard drive backups obsolete?
Are your hard drive backups obsolete because of the cloud? Well, I mean, good backup philosophy is that you have one on site, you have one off site. So if you lost connection to the internet, you would have that hard copy right there nearby. If you had a fire in your house, you'd have that copy that would be off site. So it wouldn't matter what got damaged in the house. You'd still have data out there. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's still valid just for convenience. You can take that hard copy with you too. So if you have to change locations.
Can't take it with you. Sorry.
Well, if you got a
Well,
lot,
I mean, if your
Bitcoin,
existential planes of existence aren't part of the discussion.
throw it in the casket.
But I do believe in the cloud backup solution, though. I find it to be one of the easiest ways to fix most people don't have backups. Like the question is, should I get into cloud? And you look at your environment, you go, yeah, because you don't back up anything. You should totally be it's $100 a year and everything on your computer can be backed up. Whereas right now you're not backing up anything. So it's a very simple solution to people that have data they're concerned about losing.
And yet there are enterprises of the cloud, which basically is relying upon wires through the ocean.
Well, I mean, yeah, as well as we have this third-party doctrine in the United States that makes it out of your control whenever you're hosting it somewhere else. And just to refresh people's memory, if you leave mail in a mail server like Gmail, the government can just ask for it. They don't have to get your permission. They can just ask for it. So if you have privacy concerns like that or security concerns like that, the cloud isn't the right solution for you. There's also been not recently, but in the past, we've had examples of overreaching organizations concerned about what you're storing in the cloud. They will monitor your cloud activity. They'll see if there's movies or music or things like that in your cloud backup. Now, we haven't heard stories of that recently. That doesn't seem to be a recent concern. But the fact that when you use a service like that, there's the potential for that kind of abuse, or at least considered abuse from your perspective, that you're not getting a truly unique, secure, private environment. You're getting one that might be regulated by a third party. And so that could be a concern as well. It's hard. I think you have to make these decisions with all those things in mind. And at the same time, you can't spout the virtues of one idea versus another without segregating them from these other items. The cloud as an idea is the ideal situation. It's when this other stuff comes into it, it starts mucking up this idea. But the idea that you can jump from one device to the next and have access to the exact same data, to be able to lose a device and sign into a new device, and have that data at the very least eventually end up on your, that is obviously the solution. But it's these other things that we have to consider. It's like we can't talk about healthcare on its own. We have to talk about American healthcare. We have to talk about the way we execute it. You have to be concerned about letting the government have your health data, because on the way there, your insurance company might see it as well. You just can't have.
It's not a might.
Right.
It is a they will.
So in being concerned about your rates going up because your insurance company has gotten a hold of your health data is not, to me, a legitimate reason to exclude your health data being digitalized and available to any health service that's available there. I see the merits of that. What I don't see the merits in is the insurance company being involved in that. But they are. They absolutely can't have a real conversation about it. And the cloud storage thing's the same way. You can't have a real conversation without including the government's trying to look at everything we do. Advertisers are trying to track everything we do. Putting it out there means that it's out there. That's got to be part of the discussion. But I have no solutions. I don't know what to tell you, Irving. But I do know that you spend the rest of your time in Homer, Alaska, which is not a place I would want to rely on cloud services to have my pictures when I need to pull up a picture. Right?
Why?
Well, because of internet accessibility.
Well, Starlink's there, Starlink's fabulous.
Yeah. Well, until Elon turns it off for some reason. That's
Well,
essentially.
my point. Can it disappear?
Yeah, of course it can. Like, ask the U.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like that with a Twitter, with a tweet, it can
Yeah.
disappear.
And then they're blind.
And again, I go back to what I just said, that shouldn't be part of the discussion, but it absolutely is part of the discussion. It's not technical, it's political, it's policies, it's the way we're running this stuff. It's not the stuff. It's the way we're running this stuff. I like to imagine way out there in the future a utopian type of society where like stuff like storage and access are all just part of our community. It's just part of us being. But that's not where we're at right now.
Of what the backup was supposed to do.
I think that's an awesome example of how important backup is the last one. Like, you really don't care what happened 6 months ago. The most valuable backup is the one right before the problem.
She backed the mistake up over everything. Completely screwed.
Irving, what do you got?
So, okay, so here's another different subject.
Oh, wait, I didn't get my backup in though. You know, here in the Tequilas, when I first started doing work with them, we would you'd have a server that would have a bunch of that out to computers, so that when you're doing work on documents, you're actually working on a network drive, this server over in the corner saved there, and then periodically you would back up that data to a tape.
Yeah.
And so what we would do is we would designate somebody in the organization responsible for switching tapes, because you'd have a tape for like every day. And then I would show up twice a week, 3 times a week, and I would bring home whatever the latest tape was, so that it wasn't in the organization. And I would have to constantly be concerned that I've got that in an air-conditioned climate environment that's secure, so no one could get it from me. And then I would have to remember to bring it back and replace it and take the next tape. Now, I haven't done Maquila in probably 5 years now, but when I left, there was a server in the corner. There was no tape drive. The drive that was in those computers would be mapped out to the cloud, and it would be local storage for anything that was currently being worked on. But if there was ever a flaw or something that got broken or something, it would all be restored from the cloud. It's called a hybrid solution, where you've got cloud space and you've got local space. It's changed dramatically since then. Go ahead, Irving. What's your other topic?
We were back on the cloud, and we're dependent on the cloud, and now every computer that I bought has no disk drive. My last disk drive is in this old portable computer, and when I get a new one, which I'm going to, the technology company, I won't have a disk drive at all.
Maybe your next computer card and SD cards up at it. So that's probably going to be your on storage solution.
Okay, because like all the software I pay for now.
Right. Yeah.
Because I used to buy a disk.
Yeah.
So if I want to buy software,
You didn't own it. You were leasing it. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
if I could use it, I want.
They would have taken it away from you at any moment if they could charge you again for it. They just couldn't back in the day.
We consulted the company and tried.
Yeah.
Then I got up and demanded that I used it for a few years. So I had upgraded. But okay, so is an SD card would basically take the place of a hard.
Yeah, of that. I mean, I think what you're referring to is that we've reached this kind of well-rounded computer that isn't necessarily great in storage, because it's not necessary, because it's been built for this cloud kind of environment. So whereas like you would own a laptop in the past that maybe you've gotten a terabyte of space in it, so some at the end ended up being about 2 terabytes of space in it. You're just not doing that or seeing that on the market anymore. What you're seeing is half a terabyte or a quarter a terabyte of space, because people just aren't saving stuff in the computer anymore. They're saving it out there in the cloud. And so if you want to continue to do that, you're going to have to supplement that storage or pay a real premium for what's considered not an average computer. You go out of your way to buy something that is uniquely not an average computer. And the best solution to that is external storage, like an external hard drive. But what's most convenient would be a card or a flash drive.
I have a portable disk drive that I plug in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like in the portable aspect of things, what would be really convenient would be like a little nub that you would plug into a USB port, or an SD card that you could slide into a slot. And we're going to be able to change, unless it's a Macintosh, there's a number of models that are still being made with slots so that you can upgrade. So somebody like I would be able to change you from half a terabyte to a terabyte or 2 terabytes. But we are going into this realm where you purposely bought the computer because of that, whereas before that was just the way things worked. And that's just not the case anymore.
So if I'm not paying for extra storage in the cloud, is everything that all my photographs, are they being stored in the cloud? I don't.
Not necessarily services you could have gotten yourself into and taken advantage of free storage until you filled that up. Oh, I've got an interesting, it might be very helpful to Cheryl with your storage issues in G Drive.
Mhm.
I had an interesting experience just recently that did not make sense to me until I started wrapping my head around it. I had a customer whose G Drive was full. They had no more free space, and no matter what they did, they couldn't get any free space, and was looking like they were going to have to buy space from Google. And what it turned out is they were syncing all their full photos to Google back when Google allowed unlimited syncing.
Right.
When Google decided to stop that, they grandfathered you in, right? They grandfathered you in. All those photos, no matter what size it was,
They were in there.
they get to stay in there. But from that point on, you've got 15 gigabytes to work with.
Mhm.
So when you fill up that last 15 gigabytes,
Which 3 nails can do,
well,
whatever.
whatever. You can't remove photos and free up space
No,
because you're already over the capacity from back when they grandfathered you in.
Yeah.
And the only way to free up the capacity is to pull everything out of your photos, to pull the entire archive, like 40 gigabytes, 50 gigabytes, well, whatever it was it allowed you to have for free, pull that all out. And now your 15 gigabytes is free, right? But you can't put all that back in
no.
because you don't have space for it. So it's residing there. This is the dilemma that I found myself in. It's like, oh, well, we'll just take 10 gigabytes of photos out of here. No, it doesn't matter. There's 50 gigabytes sitting in there.
Mhm.
You got to get all of that out of there before you can start freeing up space.
And what I wanted to do was make sure that I had them someplace else.
Yeah.
So there I had to trust the cloud because I put them in the iPhoto. I took them all out.
Yeah.
And I stopped Google
Google
Photo
storage.
from
Yeah.
doing
Oh, okay.
more
Backups,
sharing
yeah.
or whatever. And it all goes to Amazon now. This is why everything goes to Amazon and it goes to
Yeah.
Nothing goes to Google Photo anymore, which is very frustrating because I often I liked the way Google organized things and I could search and find things better there, but I'm not having as much luck with Amazon and.
Well, and Google always adds these new things like
I
doing
know.
collages and fixing smiles and stuff like that. They're really banking on you wanting those tools.
No, I'm still mad at them. Because
Well-
they kept threatening to shut off my mail and they wouldn't deliver my mail to me because my storage was full.
I remember you going over and over trying to resolve this issue, and I could not click into why you could not alleviate
Well,
that.
touch somebody. Right now, I'm getting all my mail and.
This is such
So-
a underhanded way for Google to get us trapped into some services. We didn't see it coming at the time.
Is it only for a Gmail account?
Well,
It's my Gmail, yeah.
the point is that
Well,
they changed
Google
everything
Yeah.
to be the same storage.
Mhm.
And when
So
they
Google
did
Drive,
that,
Google Docs, Google everything.
and so they allowed you to eat up what they gave you, but then you had all this stuff left in your photos that store unlimitedly, and they grandfathered you into it, right? So you had well over what you were getting for free already being used up. Then you start whittling away the free stuff, and then you can't take just the free stuff out. Every time you eliminate something, the stuff that you already have there is occupying the
It
space.
just sort of chunks down,
Yeah.
sort of like Tetris.
So if you are ready to up on Google Photos completely, there is a way for you to download your entire archive in a zip archive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can just, because of European regulation, they have to make it available for you to get everything that you've given them ever out of your account. And so you can go in and do a big download of just your photos archive, and it will bring it down in one big ball.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yes,
It
it
takes
does.
energy. It takes hoping that
Frustration,
nothing goes wrong in the middle of it. So I
yelling,
took it
yelling
in
at
bits and
me. Why isn't
pieces.
this
They
working?
leave the onus on the customer.
Yeah.
Which is the
Oh.
frustrating part of it.
Well, yeah, but the only
So-
redeeming part is we can do something, whereas before we couldn't. Before there was no easy way to get a
The
hold of it.
onus is
Well, it's not an
on us,
easy
but
way,
they
but
don't
it's
tell
right.
us.
No,
how
well,
to
it was
do
impossible
Don't play fair.
before.
No, they don't. Well, and like Scott says, they're trying to sell you services.
So the next thing is I'm looking at what am I going to buy to replace this
It was such a
HP
long game for them to play,
laptop
though.
that I have.
Well,
And
yeah,
Yeah.
Chromebook, my
15
They-
gigs.
my
they got
answer.
people
But
sitting
I
there
won't have
planning
anything
this
to do
shit.
with them at this point.
It's same as the
Chromebook
health
might be the
services. They
answer, but
got
I'm not
people
going to
sitting
ask
there.
that question.
They're paid to do nothing but look at the future and see how they can game it.
Well, I'm not going to get to my news articles, but I did have one other experience I thought you guys would appreciate and enjoy hearing about. I was writing a program and using AI. AI was my co-pilot through it. I didn't actually use Copilot. I used Bard, which I think all of you have access to, bard.google.com. And it was probably the first real experience I had where I said, I'm not going to write any code. I'm going to let Bard do it all. And what I needed was I needed a function. I had written a backup system for this organization where it would, I'd schedule, it's a program that gets scheduled. So the scheduling is a separate mechanism than the program. The program is a backup program. It looks at whatever file you're in and it makes a backup copy of that to a specifically designated folder. So you would have that instance and time backed up and you could continue with whatever you're doing in that file. Work tools that we have to go every 12 hours and make a backup. But what happens is those are collecting. So after a few weeks, I go into a directory and I see there's just dozens and dozens of these backups that are just unnecessary. I really just want to keep like the last 5 and the rest can be deleted. So I needed a program that would go looking into these folders, identify the last 5 backups and leave them alone and delete everything else. And so I started my Bard experience telling Bard this is what I wanted to do. And it was miserable. It had no idea how to help me with it. And so I backed off a bit and I'm like, all right, well, how about just listing everything I have in a directory in G Drive? Well, it very quickly could do that. And so I took that. I mean, it was very successful. All I had to do is I had to change what folder I was having it point to and give it authenticity. I had to like username and password stuff so it would have access to that folder. Everything else was pure code. It stole from the internet and built for me. So I took that, I copied that, I set it aside, titled it, "This is working for getting things out of a folder." And then I'm like, okay, there are other things in here. There's a folder of file or a folder of folders. That's what I have, a backup folder called backup. And then each inside that, I have a folder for each thing that needs to be backed up. The employee report form or database is getting backed up multiple times. The production report is getting backed up multiple times. And I needed to go into each one of those folders, identify the most recent 5 things, leave them alone, and delete everything else. Like I said, it couldn't do that right off, but it could see what's inside it could see the files inside a folder. And I set that aside. I'm like, all right, but it's not seeing the folders. I need something that will see the folders inside a folder. And so it wrote that. I just had to change the designation and everything else worked. It showed me a list of all the folders. And so I set that aside. So then I said, okay, I want these 2 put together. I want you to make a file of folder. I mean, and I just kept doing this. I kept banging on it. When something would work, I would set it aside. And I needed it. Oh, I know. The next piece in it was I needed to identify things that are older than the last 5. And it was able to successfully write that. main components of my program. I could not get it to push them together. So I pushed them together. I took each piece because I know how to read code. I was able to take one piece, hook it to another piece, hook it to another. I couldn't go that far. I couldn't get it to work on my own, but I could take what my amalgam of code and I threw it at Bard and said, this is what I'm trying to do, but it doesn't work. And it made it work. And so I wrote this thing and it absolutely works, authenticates, it does everything it's supposed to do. I wrote it in an afternoon. It would have taken me a week to sort out in the past. Now, is it the most secure code? I don't know. I didn't read all of it. Is it the most efficient? It might be.
It might be.
It might be, because another thing that I did throughout this last week is I took code that I had previously written and I was throwing it at Bard going, can you make this run faster? Can you make this more secure? I mean, things of that nature. And it would spit back code to me and I would stick it in and see if it worked. And if it didn't work, I'd look at it and see if I could identify why it wasn't working. And many times it was just a little thing here, a little thing there. And all of a sudden it's working. And I would spit it back at Bard and I'd say, hey, this is great, but it's still too slow. And it would give me a new version. And maybe it would work. Maybe if I could fix it, I'd fix it. Until it's like, it would spit me back an answer. Your code is great. It's well documented.
All this in plain English.
What's that?
All this in plain English.
That's right. This is all in plain English. This is me telling it. Now, it's a good question because I've been saying for a while now, I mean, what I'm doing is I'm prompting an AI, and prompting engineer is a job that has risen to the surface just in the last few months. This is a thing.
And it's highly paid too if you're good at it.
Yeah, but I doubt it's going to be a job for more than 5 years.
Yeah.
I think that it's a right now moment, right in this moment job. It's like a mechanical Turk. We're getting through a hump where and when you look at some of these engineered prompts, it looks like word salad. So I'm using English to the best of my ability to explain what I need to get done, and I'm providing examples and data sets to work from. And that sounds very complicated, but it really is me just copy and pasting into a chat window and telling it what I want to do with it. That's essentially what I'm doing. And the next level up is recognizing that you could get an even more effective result by understanding how to write the word salad that would get the right results immediately. And that's why I think that's the job. It reminds me very much of when we first started getting high-speed internet here in San Carlos, and there were people that would come into my office and pay me to do Google searches because Google was complicated to understand at the time. And I remember that was a source of income for my business for a couple of years. And then it wasn't at all. Nobody ever needed help using Google from that point on. It took a couple of years for Google to come into line where even a normal person could talk to it. And I suspect that's what's going to happen with these AIs. Is this is going to be a job until the AIs can understand just somebody off the street, what they're asking for and what their constraints are in natural language.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I use Bard now all the time instead of Google. Almost, I find I get better answers. And if I wanted to figure out how to do something on one of the computers, I ask Bard and I get suggestions. I don't get websites, I get suggestions.
Yeah.
And it's polite. It says, did this help?
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But is Bard only for technical, like for?
No, it's for anything.
No.
Yeah. Okay, you guys are finding it successful in the tech world for writing
No.
code and for
Well, this
computers.
interaction that I'm having and using,
Yeah.
I find that very successful because that's the kind of interaction that I would have collaborating with another developer when I'm stuck and I'm asking somebody to look at my code and tell me why it's not working. And when you look at code, I'm sure Bill has some experience with this too. Is somebody else's code looks like nonsense. Yeah. It's like you can barely follow the stuff you've written.
Spend a half a year trying to figure it out.
Somebody else's code, yeah.
Well,
Well, yeah, they had not. I mean, that's when they document it well, and they've used good data
God
structure.
help
And,
you if they're shitty programmers.
right, if they're the fly by the seat of your pants programmers, you have no
The-
chance of
The
understanding what
old
they've
basic language, you could go anywhere you wanted in the program, come back to another spot if you wanted. It was
written.
word
The
salad.
go-to
basically.
goat sub.
A go-to
Yeah.
return.
Back to the beginning, it's a BARD.
Yeah, Bard.
But
.google.com.
I don't use it essentially for that all the time. Like the other day, I was watching the diving pelicans, and I figured, how the hell do they hunt? Do they hunt actually see a fish down in there or whatever? So I started with Bard. I said, how do brown Mexican pelicans hunt? And they started out, and I said, well, do they use sight? And they give me that. And then somebody had told me one time that their eyes get damaged from diving that high up, and it said, no, they're fine. So I basically know about brown pelicans with about 3 questions.
Yeah, this is fascinating because what it is it's like you have a teacher's assistant and you've given them a reading list, and now you can go to that assistant and ask them all the questions you need to perform your higher level task.
Well, it's
What I
sort of
wanna know
like the
is it
doctor
didn't
and the
tell you
nurse.
this.
When you were talking, I thought you
There's
used
6
a
kinds
nurse.
of pelicans in the world, and only one of them dives into the water to feed.
Yeah.
And that's the brown pelican.
Brown
Did
pelican.
it tell you that?
I could have probably asked.
All the others swim around and
Swim around, yeah.
dip things up.
Well,
Like
at
whites.
home, we have big white pelicans on the lakes and the rivers. And you see them, they don't dive, they scoop. You see them out on the, then they,
I just one last thing. It will make up stuff in whole cloth. Like I had some experiences with a data structure that absolutely doesn't exist in the language that I was writing, but it was written up. It looked. I mean, if I didn't know,
Yeah.
And honestly, I didn't know. I'm like, oh, really? Is that a data structure I can use? And it's failing. And I go out to Google and I'm like, show me this class, and it brings up things are documented in a very structured way. So there's technical documents out there about programming languages. I can look at the class of something for a language and I can go through all its methods and I can search the whole page. I'm like, no, that's not in this method. That's nothing. And I got mad at the AI just to see how it would behave. I'm like, no, this does not belong in JavaScript. You can't do that in JavaScript. I need a different way to do it. And it humbly apologizes. Yeah. It goes, oh, I'm sorry. You're right. That isn't available in JavaScript. If you're using JavaScript, you have to make this. And I really tried to provoke it too, because later on in the same session, and you have different sessions. So like you're working on one problem. If you have the mindset to switch sessions to another problem, that new session is a whole different experience. It's an encapsulated experience. That first session is learning and growing from what you're feeding it. That second session has no idea the first session that you were in. It's growing and developing in a different way because you're interacting with it with slightly different things. So in that same session, I'm like, this is the second time you've done this. This is wrong.
Stop it.
Yeah, right.
TV after 7.
That's right.
My friend used to try and make the GPS swear.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
When
yeah.
the GPS first came out, they would on purpose do something wrong just to see if you could make it swear.
That's not right.
Time where you could put your own instructions
Yeah.
in.
Yes.
Well, we had one time that you could put in your own voices.
Yes.
So I had my grandchildren sit on my knee, and we the one that says, whenever possible, make a U-turn.
Yeah.
Our little granddaughter was, turn around, Papa. But they were all the commands were our grandchildren.
I always confuse right and left, and I had going somewhere, and I had, God damn it, I told you to turn right. It was my husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in YouTube, there's a video of somebody driving in Hawaii,
Oh yeah.
and it talks pidgin to them.
Yeah.
you know, and it gets upset because it's all in pitch.
The GPS we have now is if you get on the wrong way on a one-way, it has a red flash
Full
around it, and
screen.
it says you're going the wrong way.
It does it all in this town all the time.
Yeah,
You don't get that sexy female voice either.
I guess you could
You're
switch it to that. I don't know.
Guys, we got to go. We're
Yeah.
at the end here. Is there any last minute things we'd like to contribute to this meeting? I see Jim's the only one
I'll
left
trade you for the
online.
3 over
Jim, you got any last minute things you want to contribute to this meeting?
Happy Thanksgiving.
I see him shaking his head, but we can't hear him.
Happy Thanksgiving, all of you.
You're muted.
We didn't get our turkey.
What I said was it's been fascinating,
Walmart has
especially the last
No,
15
Oh.
minutes.
Our Canadian
Oh wow!
Thanksgiving.
Not only you're not muted, but I can't hear you, which is probably my fault since starting this meeting. Give me 1 second.
I have a recommendation for a show.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask my wife if she remembers.
Oh, I guess I don't have the answer.
Lawyer. And that has a lesson.
You sign language, Jimmy.
Sorry, Jim.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
There's this program about a lawyer
Bye-bye.
who goes up there to join a newspaper. I mean, a newspaper writer, sorry.
Yes, a journalist. It's called something daily, Alaska Daily.
The Alaska Daily.
The Daily. We watched it last season with Scott.
I recommend it. It's really very.
And Scott's parents who live in Alaska say it's the most true and paints Alaska in a way better way than any.
I think Irving would concur, right? It's probably out of all the series that have showed up to be Alaskan, it's probably the closest depiction of what it's like in Anchorage.
Some of them are completely nonsense.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Alaska Daily.
embarrassing
The
nonsense.
Daily.
Yeah.
So Alaska Daily, and yeah, very good.
Like Northern Exposure.
No, it's more real. Northern Exposure was soap opera.
Northern Exposure to me was Flagstaff.
Okay.
The characters. were
Yeah.
We have
Oh.
a show that's a Canadian one, based in Saskatchewan, called
Corner gas.
Corner Gas, and it's just a subset of a small town, prairie town. It's just awesome. It only ran for what, 3 seasons, 4 seasons?
Yeah, and
It was just funny.
local Canadian comedians are the stars in this show, and they now have made it into an animated with their voices.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
I
they're
have another recommendation, which I just bought because I couldn't get it free. And again, my for some newspaper. There's something news,
Oh, shipping,
the shipping news.
Oh,
The shipping news?
It's an old movie. It's a great movie. I just bought it because I can't get it with all the subscriptions I have without
Yeah.
buying it. Remember it?
I do know shipping news. It's
I've never heard of it.
too.
Yes.
It's East Coast shipping news.
Fabulous.
Yeah, it is a good one. The one I've just binged it's a mini series, 4-part series of the book, All the Light You Cannot See. It's an amazing story.
Saw it on there.
The blind girl in France and in the German
World War
occupation.
II.
And yeah, it's full of espionage and it's just an amazing story. So
Thank
all the light you cannot see.
And that's a series.
Well,
It's a
it's a
mini
series.
series or a limited series, I guess they call it, a limited
Yeah,
series.
it has an
4
end.
parts, 4
Okay.
parts, sort of 4-hour movie.
Unlike some,
Okay, I've got
To the last episode.
Yeah.
I've got one. Hugh Laurie, House and Blackadder, called Avenue 5. It's a sitcom based in outer space. Hugh Laurie plays the ship captain of a cruise boat that turns out he is just a puppet and has nothing to do with the captaining of the ship. He is absolutely just there as like cast. to create the illusion for the guests, and they have a space emergency that ends up the kind of it's reminiscent of what we were watching these cruise ships that people couldn't get off of during COVID. They're in a situation where they can't get off the ship, and so they're stuck living together for years. It is closer to Blackadder than it is House. It is not to be taken seriously, but it is a lot of fun, and it's called Avenue 5.
I don't know that Blackadder that you're talking about.
Oh, you're not familiar with Blackadder?
No.
Yeah, it's a BBC comedy that Rowan Atkins and Hugh Laurie became really
they're
like the snake, the Blackadder.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got the other.
But it's closer to nonsense humor than it is like House was always really a very intellectual, very procedural, a lot of funny stuff, and this is the other side of that spectrum. This is silly stuff.
Python.
Yeah, much more Monty Python
Do you
kind of funny
remember
stuff.
the old movie Airplane?
Yeah.
So Airplane had the autopilot, and his name was Otto, and he would
Right.
go up, he was playable. Anyways, when you were talking about, he was just
Wait,
Captain. I would call him Bro.
one of the subplots in it is that the guy that actually runs the ship dies in the first episode, right? And so nobody knows the captain doesn't know anything. They don't. Nobody knows he's just a figurehead, and the captain doesn't learn except in the first episode that his entire crew that he's been playing a captain for is also playing roles and have no real knowledge.
Because we were about to. Anyways,
No, everything there you learn in the first episode. There's I mean that's not.
Oh, that's a series.
It's a series, and they're in their season, and it's through HBO. So you probably on Streamio. That's where I've ended up watching it. But they're very easy to watch. They're like 30 episodes, and they're really funny.
I don't even bother with any of the other streaming.
Yeah, speaking of which, our Disney Plus just sent us a notice that they're going to increase our fee. But at the same time, I saw an offer to get Disney, Hulu, and Stack all the price that we're paying for Disney. So I'm trying to find out where I saw it, and maybe I have to switch.
That's Bard.
Yeah.
Let's get an answer.
Bard belongs to Google. Have I not,
Oh, I
have I
see.
not explained
Well,
my relationship
in-
with Google enough?
In opera, they have what is it, Aria or something on the sidebar?
Yeah, what
It's
else
an
can I
AI.
use if I don't want
Oh,
to?
in Opera, yeah, Aria. You can
Aria.
use that.
Aria?
Yeah,
Is
I
it
think
that-
that's what it's called. ARIA.
Yeah, it's in the sidebar. It's right.
Aria. Well,
Yeah.
Opera. That
It's
makes
in
sense.
Opera. Yeah, it's one of the
What about-
sidebar icons, and you bring it up and you deal with it. There's also one based in Skype.
No.
Oh, we don't.
The-
Okay. I haven't
In
used
Skype,
either.
there's a chat client there, and if you open up Edge on
Yeah,
the
they got
bar
one.
on the right, there's a Chat GPT
What's it
client
called?
there. I can't remember what
Oh,
it's called at the
I
moment.
should know.
It's Bing. It's called Bing.
Bing. Is
Yeah.
it Bing?
Oh, Bing.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
see
it's branded Bing.
Beware of Bing. They'll take over your computer.
Very
Stay away from Bing.
Okay.
What you don't understand is if you have a Windows computer that's already taken over your computer.
I don't want to see it.
The
Or hear
assume
it.
stuff.
Huh?
It's like there's an ant over there who's assuming you're evil in some way. I don't like bringing.
Well, I've never liked Bing just because it hasn't been as effective as other things, but Google has actually become kind of a joke for some things. You Google something nowadays, there's a good chance you'll have one page of advertising before you get to any
Yeah.
meat.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
they do sort too. Whoever pays the most is first.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the ad blocks block that?
Well,
I probably
It-
don't get it because I probably have.
it depends on what kind of technology you're using. I'm not familiar with an ad blocker. These kinds of search results, they come up on the page as organic, but they're labeled ad. So they're like right there with your results. They're not separated. They're not a
Google
banner
Mail.
or anything like that.
My Google Mail, when I go to Gmail, as opposed to going to my mail provider or whatever, the first 4 things are all ads in each category. Like,
And it's just going to get worse. Wait till they're raising Disney and Netflix prices specifically to push you into the advertising model, because that's what they're doing. They're warming the frog,
ours is
right?
going
Yeah.
up in November.
Frying the frog.
Yeah, they're boiling the frog because
Boiling the
they're
frog.
They
getting.
warned us it will be
This
going
is
up
that's how they
in
got us out of
November. How much?
DVDs, is they just kept raising the
So-
price until
looking
people were like,
elsewhere.
I'm not going to pay that to watch DVDs, and Netflix is like, oh, thank God, we don't have to keep
But I think
sending
I
out
can
those
get it through
DVDs.
somebody else.
You know, I've been
You know what I
using
mean? Like my
Netflix
bank card,
so
all
long.
my
I used to get the
business
DVD
because-
in the envelope.
Sure,
my,
yeah.
That's how I.
Amazon.
But you remember, I mean, that became the
I think I've got it through
premium
Amazon
Oh,
now.
monthly
So I
price
can
was to be able to
maybe
get
go
those
through
discs.
my
Yeah, you
credit
get 3
card
discs,
provider
and as
instead.
long as you get them in the mail, I duplicate them and ship them back right away.
But yeah, that's all these streaming services. None of them are making that much money, and they're now required by these new contracts for writers and
Stereos.
perfectly positioned for an advertising model. So be
I
ready.
know,
Yeah,
I
with
know.
within a couple of years, maybe a year, we're going to see advertising coming across it.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Well, this is the end, my friends. We have reached the end. These folks are on their way out. Thank you guys all for being here. This has been the San Carlos Computer Club. We meet every Tuesday, either in person or virtually at 10 Arizona or Sonoran time. They don't recognize daylight. So you people not in this time zone are floating around every time they do something like that.
Yeah, well, it's daylight savings all over, so you got to get used to it.
Yeah, there you go. Well, if you like what we're doing, check us out at scclub.org. Or if you're looking for computer help, give me a call. Scott at internationalcs.net. I said call, but send me an email. Hopefully I can help you with whatever solution you're looking for, because that's what I do.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome, Irving. You guys have a good week.
Next week.
We'll see you next week. Oh, until then, tech on.
Tech on. Is
Are you still here?
Dr. Maggie still around, or do you know?
I don't. I
I
haven't
haven't seen her
haven't seen her in a long
year
time.
or so. Her husband was